All right, to Fox News Alert, Vice President J.D. Vance wrapping up remarks in Switzerland just a short while ago, revealing that the United States and Iran made great progress on peace talks overnight.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst joins us from Tel Aviv. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. High-level diplomatic talks wrapped up in Switzerland overnight, aimed at solidifying the memorandum of understanding and entering into this next phase of negotiations. Both Qatar and Pakistan released a statement indicating that a committee was formed, and this structure reached an understanding on a roadmap for the technical talks over the next 60 days. A U.S. diplomat involved in the talks told Fox News that some of the discussion was focused on clarifying the confusing messaging on the Strait of Hormuz to ensure it will remain open, adding that robust discussions on all elements of the nuclear deal are ongoing. This morning, Vice President Vance said that the U.S., along with Qatar, will have oversight of any unfrozen Iranian funds and that some could go to purchasing U.S. farm goods. He also made a major announcement on access to Iran's nuclear program.
This is probably what we're most excited about as Americans. The Iranians have agreed to invite IAEA inspectors back into their country. That is a major milestone for the American people and the first step in permanently denuclearizing or permanently ending a nuclear weapons program in Iran. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. That's exactly what we asked to happen.
The Iranians also acknowledged major progress in the talks, adding that a deconfliction cell for Lebanon will be the first real test of the understanding. Israel and Hezbollah did not trade fire on Sunday for the first time since March 2nd, according to the UN. In response, Israel lifted all restrictions for civilians in the north of the country. In a call with Fox News on Sunday, President Trump said he was disappointed Israel can't put Hezbollah away. The leader of Hezbollah, Naim Qassem, gave a televised speech over the weekend indicating that Israeli forces staying in southern Lebanon would mean a violation to the deal.
There is no such thing as a ceasefire that grants Israel freedom of action. A ceasefire means a complete halt of hostilities by air, land, and sea. It means no demolitions, no consolidation of its presence in the occupied areas, no further advances in preparations for the withdrawal, which should take place according to a rapid, time-bound schedule.
The issue of Lebanon will likely remain a major sticking point in this memorandum of understanding, which is why they are talking about this deconfliction arena. I spoke with the president yesterday, who indicated he sees this as a 60-day option and that both military and diplomatic options are on the table after that time period. Guys?
Trey, do you anticipate Iran coming out and saying something completely different than what Vice President J.D. Vance has said? We have seen that before. Or,
yes.
are these 4 points that the Vice President laid out set in stone, to your knowledge? And also, if you could characterize the gravity of Iran agreeing to allowing IAEA inspectors into the country and also what they may be doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what we know and here's what we don't know. According to the mediators, Qatar and Pakistan, along with the vice president, they've been able to create a mechanism about the Strait of Hormuz to get better understanding on what the traffic is going to look like. Also a mechanism to try and deconflict any shooting, as the vice president described it, that could take place in the region. What we don't know is if the Iranians have agreed to the announcement by Vice President Vance. And it's a major announcement that International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors will go into Iran to survey what is left of Iran's nuclear program. The other major point that he made was that Special Envoy Kushner was able to work out a deal through Qatar, where the U.S. is going to have some oversight to any unfrozen Iranian funds, and that some of those funds could be used to purchase American farm goods to feed the Iranian people. Again, these are two major accomplishments for the Americans, but we've not yet heard any comment from the Iranians. So we have to be measured here and patient. We have to wait and see how Iran will respond, if they publicly acknowledge that they have agreed to these two agenda items. And if they have, this will be yet another indication of the progress overnight. Again, Fox News spoke with a diplomat who was directly involved in the talks overnight, who said there was robust discussion about Iran's nuclear program and the realities on the ground. This is not going to be a simple ceasefire, but it is a ceasefire, and it's expected to last for at least 60 days. Guys?
So when you talk about the IAEA going in, the question is, if they go in, how much freedom do they have? And they would play a vital role in telling us where the uranium is and how to get it out. They could kind of coach us through that because they're the experts in it. And getting into pickaxes, you've always told us, is going to be key because no one gets in there and we just cave the entrance, which they can clear out quick. But on Hezbollah, Just tell me the reality of it. Hezbollah is the premier terror organization in the world. Thanks to the walkie-talkie and exploding pagers and the killing of Nasrallah, the Israelis have done incredible damage to Hezbollah. But as long as Iran can keep backfilling with money and arms, and the IRGC can keep leading with their leaders, they're going to continue to stay. You can't really fault Israel for not taking out Hezbollah when it's Iran that keeps on just supplying Hezbollah. And do you believe that Syria can really take on that organization without any air defense, knowing the missiles that Hezbollah has? And that's what the president's calling for?
Yeah, President Trump posted on Truth Social yesterday, leaving open the option of bombing Iran if they're not able to rein in Hezbollah, their largest proxy in the region. And Hezbollah also killed 5 IDF soldiers over the weekend,
yes,
prompting hundreds of Israeli strikes across southern Lebanon. And so this question of deconfliction is very important because it will require the attendance of all parties to adhere to such a deal. Because you can't have a deconfliction line unless both of the parties that are shooting are part of that line in that conversation. Now, more broadly, this issue of how to deal with Hezbollah. When I spoke with President Trump yesterday, he said he was disappointed in the way that the Israelis are handling the fight against Hezbollah. And he spoke about Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara, saying that he actually talked with al-Shara in the past about the possibility of fighting Hezbollah because he believes he would be more precise and not knock down buildings. This issue of Hezbollah will remain because tens of thousands of Israelis have been displaced from their homes in the northern part of Israel. Hezbollah has routinely attacked the civilian population here, and the Israelis have responded mostly against southern Lebanon in recent days, but also against the Lebanese capital of Beirut in the past. And so this is going to be an area of focus in this memorandum of understanding. Remember, the Iranians are trying to tie this issue of Lebanon to the broader agreement, saying that any strikes against southern Lebanon would be considered a violation of the memorandum of understanding. And so this is an arena to watch, along with the Strait of Hormuz and the commitments that Iran has made as it relates to their nuclear program. But if the Iranians confirm that they are indeed allowing international atomic energy inspectors into their country, we have to think about the timing of all of this. Exactly 1 year ago, there were American B-2 bombers over the skies of Iran targeting Natanz and Isfahan and Fordow, taking out Iran's nuclear program. Exactly a year later, according to the vice president, they have allowed international inspectors to head back into their country in the days ahead. Guys?
Great job, Trey. I'll just say,
Thanks, Trey.
When it comes to Syria, policing Lebanon, I think the president knows that they can't do it. But what you have is a lot of the Arab and Gulf states complaining to the president of Israel getting the job done. You know, as much as we want to move forward, the Arab Muslim world still has some hatred toward Israel, even the ones that are more peaceful than Iran. And every time something inflames because of their population, they're going to complain to the president and say, hey, you got to get control of Israel. This is our most trusted ally, but I think take the president, not at his words, even when he gets a little frustrated sometimes, but his support, his ironclad support of Israel. All of our operations have been in sync. We're still sharing, intelligence amongst one another. And at the end of the day, I believe that Iran is going to continue to support Hezbollah, and then the president will have to respond.
I do think you're right. There's, of course, a residual resentment. I think it's much dissipated compared to 1976 or 96 compared to 2026. But Hezbollah is Shia, and they are not liked in the region. They were hated when they were infiltrating into Syria, and they were starting to foment unrest in neighboring, less armed up countries that are mostly Sunni. Saudi Arabia is not a fan of Hezbollah. So the Shia-Sunni connection is always important to keep in mind. But Hezbollah was so strong, they were feared. I think they're a lot less feared, and a lot of times Israel is doing the work of the other Arab neighbors by going after Hezbollah. But the fewer Lebanese you kill, the better. I get that.
Yeah, I like what the press conference from the vice president. 4 tangible things that took place overnight, and forward progress appears to be made.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.